Hello, friends. Hello, Periscope friends. Hey, guys. How's everybody doing? Angel, hello. Welcome. Glad to see you guys. So, I am hopping on here because today we are doing Do Not Teach Science Monday. So I was just curious, and you guys can just start hopping on and sharing if you have anything that you have. Angel, thank you for inviting your followers. If you have anything that you have observed or thought about today while not teaching science on Monday. So if you've already got some ideas, then, pop them in there, pop them in the comments. But while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and backtrack for anybody who is new to this. So last Thursday, I scoped about not teaching science on Monday. And today's Monday, so here we are, not teaching science today. But the idea is this. Sometimes we get so caught up in thinking about, what am I supposed to teach? And how do I present this information? And maybe even feeling nervous about science because we feel like not experts in science. And we feel like, if our kids start asking questions, then we're going to not have all the answers, only do science 2 times a week. Okay, so the idea was that rather than having a time where science was mommy directed, or mommy's reading a book aloud, or mommy's saying, come on over here, let's talk about this topic, rather to take a day, and if you didn't have a chance to do it today, that's okay, do it another day, but take a day where you maybe keep a notebook in your back pocket. And all you do is just to keep track of the things that your children explore, the things that they wonder about, the questions that they ask, the things that they come across in what they're reading, because really, there's science happening everywhere all the time, right? So they're drawing and they want to understand how to make a table look like they're looking at it from the side, right? That's science. I mean, yes, it's art, but it's also science, the science of how our eyes get information from our environment. Or, they have a cut and they take the Band-Aid off and the cut is healing. It's doing better. Science, right? So it's happening all the time. They're coming across it all the time. So I wanted to share with you today 3 ideas of what you can do when your children are interested in something. Okay, so Angel, I'm so glad you're here because I remember you telling me on a scope one time, and this was really helpful to me. It really kind of put into words something that I had maybe thought about but never really concretely wrestled with, and that is that everything doesn't have to be a teachable moment. I loved that because, on the one hand, I feel like sometimes I need encouragement to take advantage of the teachable moment, like, just stop what I'm doing, pay attention to the child, interact with them. But on the other hand, sometimes I need encouragement to not make everything a teachable moment, and I think you were talking, and especially in terms of, like, you don't need to correct everything that they're saying, like, what a cute letter to grandma, but there's no periods and you need to capitalize these. Instead, just be like, that's awesome. Good job. Nice letter. And, well, actually, that really stuck with me, Angel. I'm not going to promise that I've remembered everything from every scope. I'm sure I haven't, but that was a good one. So that's kind of what I was thinking of with this, with this not teaching science on Monday idea is just, everything doesn't have to be a teachable moment. But everything, even if it's not a teachable moment, it's still an opportunity. And so here are some things that I was thinking about doing when we see our children explore things, okay? So the first one is just explore with them. Not really providing answers, but almost like asking more questions. So, for example, your child is looking at a leaf and they say, wow, this is a really cool leaf. You don't have to have a whole lesson about a leaf, but just flip it over on the back and say, and look at these lines. Isn't that really interesting how it has these lines on it? Just like that. They're observing and they're in awe and they're wondering. Just do it with them. You don't have to really have answers. Okay, they're in the bathtub and they're playing with water and they notice how, they pour from one cup into another cup and it overflows. Then just take their little fist and put their little fist down in a cup full of water and let them watch how the water spills over the side when something else goes into the water, you don't need to be able to explain the physics of how it all works and everything like that. All you're doing is saying, yes, exploring your environment is a good thing to do. Keep doing that, and I'm doing it with you. Right. So number one, play with them. Just explore with them. They're wondering, wonder right alongside of them, okay? The second thing that you can do when you observe things that are of interest to them, and this is especially, when they're a little older and they're able to, thanks, Angel, taking notes, that's awesome. It's just, and this is, Liz Davis is fantastic about this. I've learned a lot from her, but seeding the environment, okay? So I used to think, all right, so your kids watch something or are interested in something, right? Well, then what you need to do is you need to make a lesson out of it. So you go to the library and you get these books and you say, come here, children, we're going to read this. And then we have this project and this worksheet we're going to do. So, we're going to take advantage of this teachable moment. We're going to, have this lesson that we do. Okay, great. That's fine. Not necessarily a bad thing. But, yep, seeding the environment. Exactly. So what you do is you see that they're fascinated with the birds that they're seeing out the window. Okay? And if they want to sit down and talk about it, great. But what you could do is just to go to the library and get a bunch of books at a variety of levels, because sometimes you'd be surprised at, how engaged a child might be with something or at what level they might really like to explore it. Just bring the books home and leave them on the toy chest. That's where we put our library books. Or go sit on the sofa, curl up under a blanket, and start looking at the book. And if they say, can I read that? Say, well, just a minute, I'm reading it, but you can have it when I'm done. Wait just a minute. And just give them the opportunity to look at it, to explore, to follow up on it. I have been amazed at the learning that my kids have done. And I'm not trying to brag. I don't think I have exceptionally brilliant children or anything. But, as I've mentioned before on my scopes, this past school year was the hardest one we've had yet. And some of it had to do with schooling, but some of it had to do with mommy, hormones, postpartum issues. And I just felt like I was really dropping the ball. Like we just did not do so much from our school year. All the things that I thought I was supposed to be accomplishing just weren't happening. We kind of stripped down to the bare minimum. But you know what happened? The kids had so much free time on their hands, and they were using it for good things. I used to have a fairly structured day, like pretty much, I'd give them little breaks here and there, but pretty much their day was structured. Angel. Sorry, brain's not working well at 3. Not only did they thrive, I feel like they grew in their ability to be independent learners. So my daughter basically taught herself to knit and crochet. I mean, somebody helped her to get started, but she just practiced and practiced and practiced so much that she's now very efficient at them. I don't even knit or crochet. So, this isn't something that I directed. My son has done a great deal of teaching himself how to draw just by finding things that he wants to learn how to draw, copying them. First, when I say copy, I mean like trace and then, copy on another piece of paper. Anyway, so off the subject because we're talking about science, but hey, Forrest, I'm so glad you're here. But just the idea being that our kids really can do a lot of great self-teaching when they have the opportunity. And I think sometimes we have this fear, that if I'm not kind of directing things, if I'm not, managing the process, they're not going to learn anything. They're not going to, do anything structured with their time. But how it is for us as adults, first of all, think about the last book that you read. Think about the last, blog post that you read or whatever that you read. I mean, how often do you read something just because you say to yourself, a well-educated person ought to read this, so I will read this, and I will take notes on it, and I will memorize the significant bits of information here. I mean, I never do that, right? It's always like, okay, I've got to eat healthy. I need to figure out how I can do that on a budget. This blog looks like it has some information that I need, or whatever it is, right? And we don't consider that to be like selfish or lazy. It's just practical. That's what we're interested in. That's what we need to know right now. And so that's what we spend time, and if I spent an hour or so in the evening, researching about meal planning for the family or something, I wouldn't feel like I was being, lazy or wasting my time just because it wasn't like heavy academic work or something that I was doing. It was, related to goals that we have for the family or things that we need to do. And so the same thing is true when our kids are interested in, you're not neglecting your family, right? I mean, all things in balance. If I spent all day on Pinterest and ignored the kids, okay, right. But point being, when we choose to spend our time, it's often motivated by things that are of particular relevance and interest to us right now, and that's a pretty good motivator. Sometimes we have to say, okay, got to do this. Don't really feel like menu planning, but got to do it. But usually, there's some just natural interest or motivation there anyway. So, step one, just explore and wonder along with your kids. Step two, seed the environment. Just, if they're interested in stuff and you're providing the resources, you're really not going to have to drive that ox cart. It's going to kind of pull itself. And then step three is it's really important to show them that you don't know everything. Okay. And I know that's kind of obvious, but here's the thing. I was reading this great article recently that included a list of books, and they're kind of like juvenile level biographies of famous scientists. And one of the things that the article was saying was that studies have shown that students view, without instruction, they kind of view science as this thing that you're either good at or you're not. Like you're either born with it or you aren't. And then when they read biographies about famous scientists who have, hey Lori, when they read about famous scientists who have struggled, in the things that inventors have run up against and the problems that they ran into and how they had to, hey guys, and the problems that they had to overcome, they had failures and they had to try again and they had to figure out a different way. It actually helps students to have a different perspective on science and realizing that this is a skill or that this is an area where there can be growth and development. It's not like you're born with it or you're not. It's something where, it's an area where you can grow and improve. And as I said on Friday, really, if we want our children to be lifelong learners, right, then we have to model that ourselves. We have to be lifelong learners. We have to model that we're still learning as an adult, okay? And so, it's funny to me when I think about how I'm so afraid that I'm not going to have the answer for my kids, like they're going to ask me about something and I'm not going to have the answer. But it's kind of counterintuitive if I want to teach them to be lifelong learners, that I would feel like I need to pretend like I already know all the stuff, right? How could I learn if I already know everything? So, hello, Hazel. Integrating science in a historical time period. Okay, that's fascinating. We just read, Lori, last spring, we read String, Straight Edge, and Shadow, which is the history of geometry. And you can't give hearts to us. That doesn't work. You have to wait. The history of geometry. And I thought that my kids might be kind of bored because it basically went back to, even before Pythagoras and how that all worked. And history of geometry, you just fell over. Yeah, I thought that it might be a little bit beyond them, but they were really fascinated to think about, because here's the thing. We think about all of these things like science and math as though it's just stuff that grown-ups have always known and that they have to learn. But, so to read about how, people didn't used to understand about right angles. People didn't realize that there were proportions and triangles that could be used to get the measurements of things using shadows and stuff like that. So, just to read about these things and to understand that this is a process. People used to not understand these things. We had to discover them. I hadn't either. And this is one of those living books that Hilda loves. Hilda mentioned having it and, reading it with her boys when they were growing up. So anyway, just those three things. If you want to not teach science, but just listen and observe what your children are interested in, then, I know I love Hilda too, then wander along with them, seed the environment, and show them that you're a person who's continually learning, somebody who doesn't know all the things, who's still growing, who still has lots to learn, and that you're interested in doing that, right? Just look up a YouTube video ask your phone, right? You can always ask your phone. What's the biggest whale? I don't know. Let's ask the phone, right? Because basically what you're doing is just teaching them how to make use of resources. You're not teaching them you need to know everything. You're teaching them here's where to look when you don't, or when you're interested in something that you don't know. So, okay, we're going to log off. Hazel, say bye-bye to our lady friends. Bye-bye. Thank you guys for dropping in. Hope you have a great Monday. She says, bye, Hazel. Bye. Never can stop the broadcast.